Hey, YouTube, Chance Paladin here. Doing another training video. Haven't done one of these in a while, but getting a lot of questions about corrective action systems, corrective action requests, corrective action plans, whatever you want to call them. They're all slightly different, but they actually all tie into the same system. So I'm gonna try not to ramble a lot, but the reality is they're all different parts of the same system, but instead of making 3 different videos that would take about 24 classroom hours minimum just to scratch the surface, we're going to do the quick version. I don't even know how long this is going to take. This is unscripted, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. So, what we're going to cover. What does it mean? And this is going to be very basic. Just bear with me. So, give me the benefit of the doubt, alright? Thank you. Alright. So what we're going to cover, what does it mean to correct something? So what, if you have no idea what a corrective action is, what a CAR is, or this doesn't get into preventative actions. That's a whole nother ball, a whole nother deal. That's huge. This is corrective action. This is after something happened. So what's it going to mean to correct something, or at least attempt to correct something? And so we're going to talk about what this is and isn't, the different audiences, because there's tons of different corrective action, different. We'll talk about all that. What the 7 steps actually are. Okay, we'll talk about that. Everyone has a slightly different idea. There's the 8th step, because you'll hear some people say, "Oh, well, there's 8 steps. There's 7. What's the 8th step? You don't know what you're talking about." We'll talk about all that. Talk about not getting ripped off, because people love money. I love, money. That would be great, so I could pay a bill or two. Guess we'll talk about the end or something. I don't know. Anyway, we'll talk about the end. Make sure it's part of a system, because I'm a system guy, but I'm also a process guy. We'll talk about that. Okay, here we go. Next. Thank you. So, an action needs to be corrected, question mark. So that's usually what happens, right? You're sitting at your desk, minding your own business, whatever, or maybe you're out auditing. Well, hopefully not, right? Because there's nothing that is more frustrating as an auditor than having to audit and having to correct the things you find. And you might say, "Oh, well, that's a conflict of interest, blah blah blah." Well, the reality is, with how short-staffed everyone's running, you're usually gonna have to fix your own problems that you find. And yes, that might be a conflict of interest, but you're going to have to put on a different hat, suck it up, and deal with it. And just act as ethically as possible. There might not be anybody else to fix it. Now, eventually, you might work up a team of kind of part-time people around the company to where you can help them fix the problem in their department. But think about it this way. If the problem's in their department, they would be fixing their own problem. Then would that be a conflict of interest? If they're fixing their own problem, they found their own problem, so they're fixing their own problem. And then you wouldn't even know about it. But that's what you'd want, right? Because that means their system's working. But then if you find their problem and you help them fix it, as long as you're still documenting it, and you document it, so you get into that whole deal. The difference is who do you have check off that you've actually fixed it, that the fix is working, okay? But we're not getting into you found a corrective. You have to do a corrective action that you found. Okay, that's kind of little. That's kind of small. That's a little bit easier stuff compared to what we're talking about. A lot of that stuff you're going to be fixing yourself anyway, and you're going to feel like a goof for not realizing that you made the mistake. You record it, and there should always be a second one of you anyway even if they're a backup somewhere, go document it all. Have them document it all. Show them what happened. And they should be the one auditing you to check all of your stuff anyway. Tell them about it, and then that way, when it's their turn to audit you, they can go check for that stuff, and maybe it'll trigger them to think about more things like that to check on you. And that's how I did it, and that's how the other auditors that were kind of not even part-time, but they worked in other departments, but they had very strong auditing backgrounds. It just wasn't their full-time job. They would come check my stuff, and they'd find things wrong that was right under my nose, and I would still fix it, but they would come and check and say, okay, yeah, good, this fixed work. So anyway, that's how it's not getting around the conflict of interest, but it's encouraging people to fix their problems, but check but verify. You're still having a third party check and verify. Anyway, so getting that out of the way, I want you to get all that out of your head. You can still do this with a 4-eye principle or 3 eyes or however many eyeballs without it being conflict of interest. This is about making sure you have a plan, and this is going to be many, many sets of eyes. These are whole teams of people. This is not like a one-man, one-woman army. This is you might be facilitating it, but these are going to be teams of people, like an engineer, a QA, a lawyer, a project coordinator, a manufacturing engineer, who know a lot, a custom application engineer. We're a team minimum, a quality engineer. So get all that small time stuff out of your head. A minimum of 10 people, minimum. Yeah. So and that's not counting, and that's a manager with every single one of those people also. So the first thing to do when you're approached with a situation is, and I put it at the bottom, but never ever get defensive. It's all about absorbing, but also you need to absorb, but start to think about what's going on to make sure that there isn't something more immediate. And the example is, of course, if somebody walks up to you and says, you need to do a corrective action plan because the front of the building is on fire right now. And it's like, no, maybe, no, but the first thing probably is to get all the people out of that part of the building and, hit the fire alarm, call 911 or whatever whatever emergency phone, whatever your plan is for whatever your fire evacuation plan is, okay? So it's about making that judgment call of the threat or the emergency level, okay? So that is a big deal, because I've worked on several different levels of emergencies through. There's been a security breach, like a physical security breach. There's been an electronic breach, to very minor stuff, to we need to start quarantining product immediately, to we need to quarantine product but we have no idea where it is. See? Or to where product has disappeared and we don't know where it is. So you have to figure out that first priority severity, and we'll get to that in a second. But you, as you're listening to this, you get out your little notepad or whatever you got, and you start writing all this down, and make sure you don't have any other distractions. You start writing all this down, like who came to them, because they might have to run to another meeting. That meeting might even be about this. So, and this might have even been the first time you've heard about what a corrective action is. But you might just naturally take notes And so you might be finding out this video after this has already happened, and so you take the notes and you don't know how to organize them, and this is how you do that. You start to figure out the priority, the severity, who the customer is, who came to them with the issue, who's going to be affected by the issue, so on and so forth, because you're going to need to start putting together a plan. So gather everything you can. If they have emails, if they have phone numbers, names, dates, anything, but just let them know, you're not being defensive. You're just gathering information, and they'll appreciate that, and write down everything. So, and then after they go, and you take down their name and their info if you don't have it, the next thing to start thinking about before you talk to anybody is you have to know your audience. Now, pretty much 100% of the time, you've got some non-disclosure, obviously, where there are certain people you can talk to, certain people you can't. So, there's so many rules on who you can and can't tell about stuff that's insane. So I'm not even going to go into that. When you sign the paperwork at your job, you should know who you can and can't talk to, who you can and can't email about what. So whatever kind of corrective action plan or report or system, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever they're having you work on, whether you're requesting a corrective action plan, or whether you have to provide one, or whether you're inputting one, you have to know who that audience is going to be, because every single one of those is going to have to be worded slightly different. So try to bear in mind if it's going to be going to a supplier or a customer, if it's going to be going internally to the company or out to the public, or if it's going to be going to your government, or if it's going to be going to an anti-corruption agency. Because if it's going to be going to the U.S. government, that might be different than if it's going to the Chinese government, than if it's going to the Russian government, than if it's going to... I have no idea, okay? So you've got to know your audience, and it's just really important, because the cultures are different. Even in anti-corruption, the cultures are still extremely different, and each anti-corruption department across the world is completely different. They each have different reaches and laws and different goals, and oh my goodness, you step on their toes and it gets all kinds of bad. So, part 2 of that is to choose your words carefully. Your emails, they end up in the news, the court, and C-SPAN all the time. If you're not familiar with America stuff too much, C-SPAN pretty much runs government hearings and government court style committee and fraud, abuse, looking intos, and the EPA has been a reoccurring theme. They have been in hearings for days and days and days on end over the last year over sexual harassment, water contamination, and whistleblowing, going after whistleblowers, and it all of their emails and everything all ended up on the news for everybody with all their names and everything. And of course they deny, but I'm sorry, their emails were out there. You can't do that. VW, Volkswagen, obviously, if and when we were doing training, when we do training, we always try to use the most current relevant. And with the automotive industry, it's really easy because they are always, always doing stupid things, and they're always getting caught. If you work for the automotive industry, you will always get caught. Always. So, VW had a special engine thing that could cheat on emissions. Very ingenuitive system that could trick the miles per gallon or whatever emissions, blah, blah, blah. And they lied, deny, until until it was proven that obviously that was the case, and then oops, and then apologize. And then it turns out they weren't the only ones, yada, yada, yada. So, there you go there, and all their stuff ended up on the news, and it turned out they knew exactly what they were doing the whole time. All their emails came out. Google, sort of a similar deal with the self-driving cars. Our cars never cause accidents. Yes, they do. Oh, well, the accidents are never our car's fault. It's like, well, do you want to play... You want to play the word game here? I mean, your cars follow the laws a little too well. Your cars follow laws that people don't follow, and so technically, what? Like, who technically is breaking the law, and then more... Or who's causing the accident then? And are cars supposed to be able to proactively be able to figure out, like, the law? Like, how do cars prioritize over how to have accidents and how to, whose life to... the whole thing just gets insane. And then other companies are buying this self-driving technology, and actually a lot of them now, and it's only going to compound. And their emails and their choices that they're making are ending up in court. And with words like mandatory, mass failure, huge risks, we must do this, and there's more. I was trying to find a decent list online, but unfortunately other things were coming up instead, which kind of, that's the way it goes with the internet, right? But if you ask your legal department, I'm sure they will have their own list. Every legal department has their own pet peeves. So you don't want your emails to end up in court. You don't want your process... Well, if your processes are going to end up in court. I've had processes end up in court tons of times. It's not a big deal. But you don't want your emails to end up in court. So, especially if you work for automotive, because they end up in court all the time. They do stupid things, and they always get caught. So, and especially for suppliers, like up here, you may never do anything wrong, but you might have a supplier that does. And every single automotive may have the same supplier. It happens. There's a couple of suppliers that are a single supplier for almost every single automotive. So, things to think about. You got to CYA, cover your butt, especially with corrective actions. So, corrective actions are one of the keys to an entire quality management system. So, which is why this is so important, and you'll see at the end, I'll talk about it some more. So, the 7 main steps, this is my interpretation of them. There are a couple different interpretations. This is loosely based off of ASQs, which I'll talk about a little bit more in the end. There's a couple different ways to interpret it, and it really depends on your business's setup and size, as well as if you're requesting this from a supplier and their size and whatnot, and also how your forms are set up and if you're doing it electronically. But basically, you'll have some kind of form if you don't have one, or if you are a subscriber to AIAG, you'll have some kind of form, or if you made one, or there's ones you can just download off the internet. but basically here are my 7 steps. This is what I do. So this is step 1, where we were talking about earlier. Someone comes up to you and starts freaking out. You write down what they're saying. Did an issue actually occur? Maybe they only think one did. And even if one didn't, they may actually be onto something. They might just not know it. But you may know of other instances that they may not. And they may have just known about the last final link. That you may be able to cross all the lines together. So, if it's severe enough, you may need to begin the containment process. Or tell a quality engineer, if you have one nearby, or the quality manager, to begin the containment process. If it's severe enough, if it's something that could get out to the public, or cause major quality concerns, or any quality concern, or any financial concern, you know the drill. You know your business better than I do. So, and again, imagine this in a form that you're filling out. Capture the specifics on why it's an actionable item. You'd think that this would be common sense, or kind of just like no duh obvious, but the reality is not every single issue that's going to be brought to your desk is actually going to be actionable. For example, someone comes to your desk and they're like, there's not enough hours in the day. And you're like, yeah, okay, there's not enough hours in the day. And so could you maybe just share that with your manager or something? So that's maybe an issue, but that's not anything you see what I mean? Or another one is, and I didn't know how to bring this up, the whole gender bathroom thing that we have going on in the United States is like, is it an issue? It may not be an issue, but it may come up as an issue at where you are, right? But they may come to you with like an issue that happened, like I'm saying. But you say, okay, but maybe you need to take that to HR or your supervisor, but they come to you instead, and that's not the process. So it may not be an actionable item for you. They may not feel like sharing it with anybody else. They may not trust anybody else. You point them to the anonymous line or whatnot. So I don't know, I can't. There are just a lot of things that aren't actionable. I can think of many that we ran into. I know another one, just bathroom related, was there weren't like enough bathroom stalls sometimes, and people would run around the building trying to find a bathroom to go to. I know another one where if people were too short or too tall, sometimes the vehicle didn't work, or wasn't ideally suited for them. I remember that. And it's like, we can't capture that like 2%. There's just, you can't make a product that works perfectly for like 100% of everybody. It's simply impossible. That's why, for example, there aren't tons of left-handed products. I mean, there's a lot of items that just don't have a left-handed variant. So, and is that really a corrective action, or is that an enhancement request? So you have to, it's not getting defensive, but you have to, step 2 here is really trying to figure out, is this something that's actionable? Or do they come to your desk and they go, the electricity's out on our side of the building, which happened to me all the time. Now, that's actionable, but you don't really need a 7-step corrective action for that. if the phone works, I would just call maintenance and get somebody out there like now, because that was those were our application engineers, and those were our people that were getting drawings approved, so we could get them over to get the parts actually beginning to be installed officially in production. We needed that stuff done like immediately, so we needed those parts shipped, delivered immediately. So I wasn't an admin, but I might have been at any given day or minute or hour the only person that was available to do it. So I did it. And I know that's why I just did all these weird random things, because everybody was so stinking busy. I sat next to a ton of quality engineers. They might have all been out on emergencies, and so I might have been the last one, and so I would get called out too. And so it might have been actionable, but maybe not a corrective action. However, like with the electricity not running out, but getting tripped, if it kept happening, it became a reoccurring event, and I would issue corrective actions to facilities. You see how this starts to come or turn around from you having to do a corrective action to you requesting corrective actions. And I worked with supplier management all the time that didn't do corrective actions. They requested corrective actions. But I worked in quality management that did corrective actions all the time. And I did some and requested some due to me being in auditing, but me doing consulting around corporate and the manufacturing plants all the time. So anyway, blah blah blah. That's step 2. Step 2 can get crazy, but that's why you have to have a good focus and a good range of knowledge about your business. So step 3, document the preliminary attempt at root cause, priority, severity. This one can be a little... Oops. That was weird. This one can be a little... not disagreeable, but this one can be a little contentious. I can't think of the right word. But what I like to do for step 3, it's not really guessing, but a little bit of this, step 3 is like a little bit of Six Sigma, kind of, where you go, okay, what do we think the root cause is? Because to be perfectly honest, it would take forever to actually figure out what it really is and drill all the way down. And it's kind of Toyota way also. But I mean, to drill down forever is like Six Sigma. And priority severity is just, I don't know, that's from tons of different stuff. Lean, agile, you name it. That's from everything. Everyone's got a different interpretation, but for step 3, I try to guess, kind of get everybody's... It's like, where do we think it is? Do we think it's us? Do we think it's transportation? Do we think it's shipping? Do we think it's tier 2? Do we think it's tier 3? Do we think it's some kind of intermediary? Did a meteor hit? Was there a flood? Was there a tornado? Was there a nuclear explosion? Because that's happened, unfortunately. I mean, there's all kinds of... When you're shipping global and there's like civil unrest because a country decided to overthrow its president, there was a military coup, all kinds of crazy things can happen. So anyway, you try to figure that out. and get with purchasing, because sometimes they know before you know, which is why you always stay best friends with purchasing. And then the priority and severity, which I said people have different opinions on what that means, but if the severity is really low, like you have tons of backstock, but the priority is really high, like once that backstock's gone, you need more like immediately, and it'll take forever. I don't know. There's a lot of different examples that some people try to loop both of those in. It depends on if you're in IT or engineering, manufacturing, but it doesn't matter. It's whatever business you're in. If people can agree on it, it doesn't matter. It's whatever you define it as. So that's what I do for step 3. Step 4 is kind of another process, sort of like part of step 1, where part of step 1 is begin containment, which is really hopefully not at least part of your job. Hopefully you have some quality engineers to do that, unless you're also a quality engineer. So step 4 is also hopefully either a quality engineer or somebody else, but if it's you, then hopefully you've got a robust process for it. If not, hopefully you've got very, 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 very high up manager buy-off, because step 4 requires a lot of high up manager utmost trust and faith and pretty much absolute power, because you need a lot of people's undivided immediate attention and some decent blocks of time to get this fixed, whatever it is. But you also have to earn their trust by not wasting tons of everybody's time. So step 4 is a lot of what we call in the industry team building, not faith building, like trust earning, trust building. I can't think of the right word, but you have to earn a lot of people's trust for step 4 to work. Me and my one of my best managers, which he retired, he had proposed an amazing process for this. It never, unfortunately, got implemented, but it was based on like a basketball analogy, and it would have worked perfectly. Basically, managers didn't have the authority to say no to it. Once there was a quality concern, it was mandatory. They had to identify somebody, and the amount of time was allotted immediately. I mean, it was a perfect system, and but I mean, the reality is a lot of management gets so. I mean, our manager was all for it, but unfortunately, some of the other managers they're so power hungry that they want control for the sake of control. And so that's why number 4 can make or break the whole entire thing, especially leveraging the timeline. So number 4 is extremely difficult because you have to have the appropriate resources. This ties directly into ISO, the appropriate resources. So if you guys or gals or the company's ISO 9001 and your guys' corrective actions are failing on appropriate resources, this ties right into ISO. And you guys can either fail the company on that based on reviewing corrective actions, or third party can look at your corrective actions and fail you, your registrars. I mean, it's pretty brutal. So this step 4 is the make it or break it right here, because you cannot have quality, you cannot have anything without resources and management support. Okay? Step 4 is all about management and resource support. Applicable stakeholders, management. Okay, good. Step 5. Develop an action plan with assigned owners from step 4 that will meet the due dates to ensure necessary steps are taken on time. That's pretty much standard. You don't necessarily have to develop it. You probably usually will be, but at the very least you will be facilitating it and coordinating it, because usually everybody's so busy that they can't. But if you get them all together, they will be more than happy to chatterbox, and you just write down as fast as you can. But, conflict resolution. You'll need lots of conflict resolution. So, in case there's any of them that don't want to get along. But usually these are all really non-confrontational. And they already usually know what the problem is, to be perfectly honest. So you just sit there and write as fast as you can. And make sure to take attendance. Those meeting minutes, notepad, or forms are really good. Okay, anyway. Yep. Okay, step 6, facilitate to ensure necessary actions are taken to address the situation. If not, make sure to report. This is kind of like part 2 of what I was saying on step 5. Take meeting notes, take really, really good meeting notes. Make sure to send the meeting notes back out to everybody's names, dates, times. You are treating this like an actual project. Every single one of these is like a little mini, kind of a lean, agile sort of a project. I wouldn't go as far as to call it a scrum. Ooh, scrum. But those are more maybe like the quality spill, like all hands on deck. We need to quarantine right now. But these little corrective actions are definitely little mini projects, and not to diminish them at all. I mean, these will kick your butt because in all likelihood you'll be doing 2 or 3 of them at a time, like per day. So at any given time I was doing 2 or 3 of these at a time, and they kick your butt. So step 7. After the pre-agreed upon increments of time, depending on how long the implementations are going to take, and the effectiveness can be measured, evaluate the effectiveness of the actions taken. This one is hard because it changes based on the product, how long it takes to be made, how long it takes the suppliers to make whatever their part is, how long it takes the new part to get in the warranty system, how long it takes the failure mode to show up. Oh my gosh. So that's why you record all of this very, very, very carefully, or you will not know how on earth to test this. That's why I was talking about back here the attempt at the root cause and priority and severity and everything sort of being like Six Sigma, because you don't know. Failure mode. There, that's right, failure mode up there too. You're gonna have to, and you should have some kind of a reliability engineering / warranty department that is going to be running warranty in parallel as part of your team to help you with all of this. Which is why, like, this step 4 would be probably about another 8-hour class minimum. Just like this containment one would be like another 3-day class. But they would be able to tell you all of this, but you still try to kind of guess it up here, because it would take like a day or two for reliability/warranty to be able to run anything. Okay? Alright, so moving on. The unnecessary 8th step. Now, this is going to look like a joke slide, but I swear this got so frustrating how often I got this question and how often people legitimately thought, because there were so many documents floating around that it's an 8-step corrective action process and an 8D and this and that and the other, and the 8th step was to have a party and celebrate your success, and me and my other amazing manager would sit there and just hold our head in our hands going, like, we have to take this step off of all of our documentation, and we have to retrain and re-indoctrinate everybody to seriously just stop it. It's embarrassing. It takes the legitimacy out of the whole thing. That's why we call it a 7-step corrective action system. But if you absolutely want to call it an 8-step, at the very least, or if you want to have a party, at least invite everybody and explain absolutely why you're having it, and explain what the next steps are, which is to have your lessons learned, if there's anything you missed, what the action items are, whatever ongoing containment's going to be, any kind of like recognition, but don't leave anybody out, and make sure people actually want to be recognized first. Some people don't. It depends on the culture. A lot of this also is going to depend on the maturity of the system that you have. Some systems are better than others. Some systems are a lot better than others. But there's also people that have pen and paper systems that run circles around super expensive computer systems. So it just depends on the maturity of the system. So don't ever forget that. Also, last but not least for this slide, I can't stress enough the how much are you really fixing? And if you do like a full 8D on this, and you really drill down into how much of the population of the issue that you're planning on fixing, when you recut the data after you've fixed it, you need to see how much of that you actually fixed. And go back to management, tell them how much you really fixed, why you only fixed that much, why you were short, or why you went beyond, because if you went beyond, then something else also weird happened. And then ask them with all respectable candor if they want you to take another cut at it, and then you start this whole thing all over again, or you hand all of this off to the full-time continual improvement group, where they'll make like a 6-month project out of it and show you how it's done when they have 6 months to do something that you probably did in like 6 weeks. Okay? Alright, so last but not least, this is important to me personally, because I still haven't made like a single dollar off any of this. But it's important to me to tell you guys to do not get ripped off. It doesn't matter if it's ISO stuff or AIAG or CTPAT or whatever, 16949, or I don't know. Do not get ripped off. by consultants. If you want to send somebody to like a 3-day ISO class, check out their credentials online first. It's probably okay, but so many of these just fly-by-night classes are junk. Or if they say they want to do some, like, we want to do a 3-month implementation of a new corrective action system at your business, and they come with like a 300-page corrective action system of new forms. Oh my gosh, I've seen it all. Okay, and that's why there's like a little picture of a form here and a big stack of money. They will take all of the money that you will give them, and they will leave you with useless junk. And even if you wholeheartedly adopt it all, you'll outgrow it in a year or two and end up making your own stuff. And you'll have just wasted like $300,000 minimum. And I've seen companies spend more than that. And I've rebuilt it myself in like 3 months. Please don't get ripped off. Please, 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 please. Please do not get ripped off. Especially not with corrective action. I have a couple references at the end that you can go check out. Great tier 1, top of the line, industry leading. Don't get ripped off, okay? So, and last but not least, whatever you're doing with corrective actions, make sure it's part of a system. I don't care if it's your company or your client's company or your agency's company. I've seen people coming from top tier agencies, and it's an acronym, and I won't say who they are, bless their hearts, but their own system was going down, and they were good kids, and it's not their fault, but they were making serious money twiddling their thumbs for a couple weeks because their system was down and they couldn't do anything. And it broke my heart, and they felt awful, and and they weren't able to do their job. You have to have. Eventually, they got it back up, but you have to have your corrective action system has to be a fully integrated, redundant, solid, robust system. Not like a little attached bit. Like, it's gotta be locked down. Doesn't matter if you're VPNing in, it doesn't matter if you're at home or in Iraq or Egypt or India. Like, wherever you are, Australia, you have to be able to safely, securely get in and do your work. China, Russia. You don't know where your supplier is going to be. You might have your emerging supplier department decide that the war in some country is fine again, and then the new president might say that we can start. It's like Cuba. Like, we can start doing business with Cuba again. Okay, and their infrastructure might be fine enough again to use. Okay. Or like when everyone started going over to Russia again, you have to have your security and your systems have to be ready to handle whatever's going on, so you can your system so you can so you can run over there and do corrective actions when things don't work. You have to be able to handle that so you can roll with it. It can't just be halfway. and just thrown together. And I guess, I mean, I've been the only one headed off into the unknown many times, having no idea what I'll run into with just my laptop and a connection back to the network. And you don't know who's going to tell you what, who you're going to run into, and you don't know if you're going to be issuing corrective actions or receiving corrective actions, and if you're going to be going to people that sell your product, people that receive your product, and all you've got is your integrity and your name and your phone and your laptop and your bag on your back with your stuff. You have to be able to support your customers, your clients, your agency. You have to be able to support your upstream and downstream with that. And the core of all of that, for all of the whistleblowing that happens and all of the corruption and all of the attacks that happen against whistleblowers, but then they say it doesn't, but obviously it does, and all the transparency that's supposed to happen, but then it doesn't, and then they say, well, we're the most transparent that it's ever been, but then they're years behind on providing documents they finally do, and then it's all redacted, and all this just going back and forth, and then the bullying. Then they say, well, we have no instances of bullying, and then you ask, have you ever heard of, have you ever asked anyone if there's bullying? And they go, no. And they say, well, why do these 5 employees say they're bullying? They haven't been bullied, it's just miscommunication. And you have this back and forth, this corrective action system, this tracking. You go back and you watch EPA. They will all agree, no matter right or wrong, both sides of everybody, that if they had just tracked this stuff in a single system, all of it, right or wrong, disagreed or not, tracked it in a single system, they all came back to that all the way up to the top. We just need to work on getting a single system, no matter how right or wrong they were. That's what they agreed on. And a lot of wrong things happened. A lot of wrong things happened. But they did agree on that. And that's what you have to look at. You have to look at, can you build a system that is so robust that it cannot be compromised by corrupt people trying to protect each other's and their own careers at the expense of other people's safety and well-being, whether it be, bathrooms or any other protected individual right. Any individual right. People messing with stuff on your desk. People messing with you. People doing stupid things like parking over the line in parking spots. People parking in the parking spot that is reserved for the people that are, in wheelchairs and stuff. All these protected, all these rules that people are supposed to follow that they don't. These all have to go back into a system. And so corrective actions, those could be HR violations. They could be environmental violations. They could be parking violations. They could literally be anything. So don't think of it as oh, that's not my job. Think of it as, that doesn't sound like my job, but where does that probably need to go in case nobody else is doing that? That probably needs to go somewhere. And I remember the simple question was, you go look up at employee boards, and they go, well, do you know if the little anonymous number was posted up on the employee board like it was supposed to be? And it was just deer in headlights. And I remember at my job, we had an amazing HR department. And I knew the gal. We'd been friends forever because of the whole auditing thing. And she busted her rear to make sure that every single one of those cork board things and every single one of the million little satellite buildings we had every single one of those pieces of paper with every single employee right on it. There was like 12 of them or something. She had facilities make sure and had every admin say where every board, like, where can the board go? The board can go here. Okay. She'd have them put the board up within like 30 days or so. She got them up as soon as she could. She had the little pieces of paper up there. Bam. That's how it's got to be. These rules are here for a reason. And there has to be a system, a corrective action system, so these things can be enforced. Because sooner or later, up and down the line somewhere, all these policies and procedures and statements for ISO or whatever actually trickle back to real laws. Which means sooner or later, they are actually violating either a state law or a federal law. Whether it be some kind of corruption or some kind of sexual harassment or some kind of whistleblower law or some kind of, bullying whistleblower law. I can't remember what that's called. So, which I know there's a bunch of corruption in that. That's a whole, Snowden and the Panama Papers and the WikiLeaks and all. I know that's a whole different story. So, anyway. This is right about the end here. So, I've been rambling. I apologize, but this is important. It's important for me to be as thorough as I can. Here's the links I was talking about. ASQ, super, super important. These guys are the real deal. Go check them out, asq.org. They're like basically the definition of quality. If you want to argue with ASQ and disagree with them, go knock yourself out. Obviously, ISO 9001 has a section 852, corrective action. And if you disagree with them, then you might as well just toss your certificate away. Although it's a little bit vague enough to where it can be lightly debated. If you don't have a corrective action system, or if it doesn't work, it is extremely easy to prove that it doesn't work. There's no way to wiggle around it. And then AIAG, I use them as an example because they have a phenomenal product. The TH&E, they have a whole guide and explanation and documentation and everything just for this 7-step problem solving process. So if you're bringing new suppliers online and you're automotive, pretty much everybody just says, okay, well, you're a member of AIAG, right? Like every supplier should be. If they're not, you can just go and pick up a digital copy of TH&E for free off their website if you're already a member of AIG, which, like I said, everybody should be if they're already an automotive supplier. So those are the big three, and ISO 9001, pretty much half the standard in some form or fashion revolves around the corrective action process. Either being trained enough to know what you're doing, have the staff, having the engineering behind it. I mean, you could almost rename ISO 9001 to the corrective action process. Or being able to actually complete a corrective action process. So, I hope this helps. I know it's a little long, but this is super important, guys and gals. There wasn't a day that went by in the years and years and years and years and years and years that I worked in either IT QA or Corp QA that I wasn't doing this in many different ways, either helping people, doing them, asking for them, supporting, or coordinating. Oh my gosh, I mean, it's insane. It would take me forever to tell you the stories. Don't get ripped off. People will take your money forever. And so, anyway, if you want any private training, tutoring questions, I have a Patreon account, Chance Paladin. Yeah, I'll try to make it more professional looking, but never made $1 off these. But I appreciate it. I know these help out a lot of people. So, thanks again, and talk to y'all later. Bye.